Do you have potatoes? Do you have horseradish leaves? Well, if so, you can make horseradish leaf bubble and squeak. It is traditionally made with cabbage and potatoes, and it has British origins. And today we're going to make one together with a little bit of a twist. The name refers to the sound it makes while it's being cooked, supposedly. We're going to test this theory later on. Welcome to True Freedom Permaculture, where I show you all the tips and tricks you need to have a green thumb, even if you weren't born with one. Let's head to my kitchen. So before I start really doing anything, I filled a medium to large size saucepan or pot with boiling water. Can you see that? What's in the frame? There you go. Can you see that? Okay, so I'm going to fill that with water and a generous pinch of salt. So I'm going to get that going, get that started. While that's coming up to a boil, I am now going to prepare my horseradish greens. I picked these horseradish greens from my horseradish plant that I have growing near the side of my house, and I just got some the other day. I'm not going to go into the health benefits of horseradish greens in this video because I did in this video coming up, so I will link it for you if you want to check that out. So I like to use as few pots as possible when I'm cooking because if I'm cleaning up, that means less cleanup, and I think everyone is on board for that. So I'm gonna get started preparing these, and I really think that horseradish is underutilized, but definitely the leaves. And I didn't know until recently that the leaves were edible, and now that I've tried them, I really like them. What I'm doing first is I'm simply cutting out the stem. The stem is pretty tough, and I don't think people really enjoy eating that part, so just kind of cutting that off. Now with the really tender small leaves like this, you don't really have to bother taking out the whole stem. I just kind of snap off the thick part. Okay, so we have our prepared horseradish leaves. Now at this point, our water has probably come to a boil. And yes, it has come to a boil, so now I'm going to take my prepared, destemmed horseradish leaves and just throw them as they are into the boiling water. And I'm going to give them a quick stir. And I'm going to let these cook for about 2 minutes, just until they get tender. Okay, it's been about 2 minutes. Our greens are nice and tender. So I'm going to take them out and I'm going to put them in a colander, like so. Now you'll definitely want to keep your pot boiling as you do this because you're going to use that same pot for the potatoes. Let's just give this a rinse. And by rinsing this in cool water, it allows the horseradish leaves to stop cooking. I'm just going to try to squeeze out all the excess water that I can because I don't want to water down my bubble and squeak. After that, I'm just going to spread these out on a clean towel and let them dry off a little bit. Now, don't fret if you don't have horseradish leaves. You can use any green. You could use spinach. You can use kale. You can use, oh, this is a great time of the year to be using up those radish tops that no one knows what to do with, or turnip greens. Just throw them in here. This is a great way to use excess greens like that. And you can also use other root vegetables like carrots would be great. Turnips would be nice too. As long as the majority of the bubble and squeak is composed of potatoes, you'll be fine because the potatoes act as a binder to make everything stick together. While my cooked greens are drying out, I'm just going to give my potatoes a quick rinse and a scrub. As I do this, I'm also going to turn my water back up to a boil. While my water is coming up to a boil again, I am going to chop my potatoes into relatively even-sized 1-inch pieces so that they all cook around the same time. One tip is a starchy, floury potato really works best here. Like a simple Yukon Gold is what I'm using, but I would steer clear of like the more waxy potatoes, like the red potatoes. They just don't tend to crisp up as nicely. Make sure to cut out any black spots. So now I have cut up all of my potatoes. You should have about 4 to 5 cups here, and I tend not to measure. I just kind of eyeball it, so if you're a little over or you're a little under, it's really not going to matter. No one's going to know. So I'm going to take these and I'm going to add them to my water, which is now boiling again. By this time my water's come back up to a boil again, so it's ready for me to put the chopped potatoes in there. We want to cook these for about 15 minutes until the potatoes are just tender. Now turn the heat back down to medium, give them a stir, and put the lid back on them and let them cook. If you're using horseradish leaves or any other pungent, bitter, or spicy green, then it really is important that you don't neglect this step, because no one wants to bite into a huge mouthful of horseradish leaf. I mean, I'm sure there's some of you out there, but most of you don't. So really it's important to get the horseradish leaves as fine as you can. All right, so now I'm going to set aside my finely chopped horseradish leaves, and I'm going to begin to dice my onion. The recipe calls for a small white onion, but I just have this onion that was on the larger side, and I used part of it for a different recipe the other day, so it was sitting in my fridge, so I'm going to use that. It's time to check on the potatoes. I like to prick a couple pieces with a fork to make sure that they're all done. Nice. I'm going to drain my potatoes and I'm going to return them to the pot to allow them to cool off. All right, so my potatoes are cooked. They are cooling in the pot. So I'm going to let them cool down just slightly. They don't really have to be cold when you make these. So obviously if you're using leftovers, they will be cold, but it doesn't matter. So let's go ahead and make this thing. In order to saute my onions, I'm going to heat up a large saucepan. Now let me save you a lot of trouble. I have tried cast iron. As you can see in this video, I have tried stainless steel, but by far I got the best results by using a non-stick pan. And you'll actually see me switch out to a non-stick, but with both of those pans, and my cast iron is very well seasoned, just the potatoes kept sticking to the bottom. But with the non-stick, it really worked out a lot better. So start using that in the beginning. Trust me. Pan on medium-high heat. you're going to add enough oil to generously coat the bottom of the pan. So it's about 2 teaspoons, maybe 2 to 3 teaspoons. Now you can use any oil of your choice. You could use, bacon would be delicious. You could use lard. You can use duck fat. This recipe just happens to be vegan and I'm keeping it that way, but feel free to add whatever you want. So today I chose to use half coconut oil and half olive oil. The reason why is that I love the flavor of olive oil in this dish, but they say it's not the best for higher heat cooking. So I used half coconut oil and that's supposed to fix that problem. So that is why I use both of those. Once the oil is hot, and you can tell by the ripples on the surface, that's how I tell, I add in my diced onion. And we're just going to saute this onion for maybe 2 to 3 minutes or so. You don't want the onion to get brown, but you just want it to soften and become translucent. You'll want to stir the onions pretty frequently so that they don't brown, and I like to add a little bit of salt and pepper. When the onions have become translucent, at this point I'm going to add in my potatoes and my horseradish greens. Now we're going to mash everything down with a potato masher. This is quite fun. It's a great stress reliever. The whole point of this exercise is we are trying to get the maximum surface area of the potatoes onto the pan. And that is how we achieve that brown, crispy layer that we're looking for. At this point, you might want to turn your heat down to medium, but if it seems okay, you can just leave it medium-high. And I'm using a wooden spoon to just kind of pack it in a little bit more. Once I do that, I'm going to let this sit and cook for 2 to 3 minutes until we get a little bit of brown underneath the bottom. It was at this point that, as I mentioned before, I switched it out to a nonstick pan because the other pan just wasn't working out, and it began to rain. So I apologize for the lighting, but it did get really dark. Now that the bottom is browning, I'm giving it a turn, and you really do want to look for that brown bit. We got to zoom in on this. Do you see that brown bit? Well, that, friends, is what we're looking for. We're in business. So let's keep folding in. We're kind of folding it in on itself from the outside to the inside. So everything has a chance to crisp up and brown nicely. Once you've done that, you're going to flatten it all back down again and repeat the process. You're going to do this for about 20 minutes. So you're actually going to repeat this like 7 or 8 times. Well, I hear a little bit of bubbling. Less squeaking, but I've done this with cabbage and I think cabbage is more squeaky. Well, now we're really making some progress, so this is going to be the last time that I do this. Now you might have noticed your bubble and squeak is slowly but surely shrinking in size, and this is due to the fact that moisture is leaving, but the flavors are concentrating. So you're going to end up with a much smaller potato cake than you started off with before. Okay, so that was the last turn that we did, and so now is the time when I turn off the heat. I'm going to do this in front here so you can see a little bit better. Take a plate, you're going to put it on top of your pan upside down, like so. Flip it, atone for everything bad you've done in your past, and whoop, voila! And there you have it, horseradish leaf, bubble, and squeak. You can serve this just as it is, you can serve it with meat or with vegetables, but my personal favorite is with a sunny side up egg for breakfast. Okay, let's see how I did. So it's pretty simple, and whether you're using leftovers or you're using food that you've cooked fresh that day, you have a really nutritious and filling either side dish or main course. And none of the ingredients cost a lot, which I really like as well. So if you like crispy brown bits like this, then you might like the video that's coming up on your screen now where I show you how to make shiitake mushroom crisps. And they're delicious, they're great on top of like soups or salads, you name it. So if that's something that interests you, then you can click on that video and I'll meet you over there. I'll see you soon.